Guys, I just got done with a video call interview for the show, and I have to say that it was like the smoothest experience ever. Didn't have any issues or anything, and the video came out almost perfect. And do you know why? It's because I used Riverside. Riverside is your online recording studio where you can record a conversation with any guest online. You can easily record podcasts and videos in studio quality from anywhere, all from your browser or their mobile app. All you have to do is get your setup ready, send your guests a link for them to join, have them join from their phone or their computer, and just chat away. A lot of podcasts that you listen to are probably using Riverside, honestly. What sets Riverside apart is that a recording of your audio and your video is happening locally on your computer. So even if your connection isn't that good, it doesn't ruin the entire recording or anything. Once you've finished recording, you will get the individual tracks of each speaker and also a combined one. You'll receive all the raw files, including that Pepsi crystal clear, uncompressed audio and up to 4K video. There's also lots of really cool features where you can edit your video right in their site. So, you're a YouTuber, a podcaster, or streamer, or a content creator of any kind, and you want to have high quality conversations with your guests, please use my link in the description and sign up for Riverside. If you want to support me and the channel, please use my link since I end up getting a cut from the sales. I'm not joking. Please support me. Sign up for Riverside and start recording today. There's probably going to be a time where I'm not going to be able to say that, but it's the I'm Clifford Today show, and we're gonna talk about that for a little bit. But welcome to the I'm Clifford Today show. I'm Clifford Today, and you're not. You know, sometimes I forget to say that, and I forget that that's my catchphrase. You know, little story about that. If any of you guys are newer listeners, because I did talk about it before. Why that became like the thing that I say, I'm Clifford Today and you're not, because I said it once in a video that one of my early videos. I think it was actually the Lauren Daigle You Say Christian pop song review. I'm going to turn my mic up just a little bit. Yeah, the when I used to do Christian pop song reviews, because I was doing the Christian version of Todd in the Shadows. But yeah, so I did this little, one-off, off-the-cuff thing at the beginning of the video where I was like, I'm Clifford Today and you're not. And I did this like little wheezing cough. And that was when I was working at, the church that I was at, and people watched it and then they loved it. So that's the story behind that. Master Eth, this is my first stream. Welcome. I have a confession to make. I've never really known whether it's. For the longest time I called you Master Eth, but then I realized, wait, no, his name is Ethan. So is it Master Eth or Master Eth? Do you really care? But welcome to the stream. I was gonna say you did chat before. Can't wait for this. I can't wait for this either. This is gonna be a good episode, and thanks for watching. For those of you who don't know, Master Eth. Yeah, so yeah, my name is Ethan. Yeah, so is it Master Eth? That's what I'm assuming. But guys, go check out Master Eth's YouTube channel. He does a lot of really great videos. Like, okay, gotcha. That's what I thought. It just kind of looked like Eth for a while, so that's what I called you in my head for a while. But he's got a great YouTube channel. You guys can go check him out. He talks about lots of different stuff. Actually, he's got a lot of videos on different YouTubers, but he also has videos on different forms of entertainment, like video games. And he just recently did a really good video on this Christian audio drama that I had never heard about. But it was a fun watch. So go check them out. They're like essay commentary type videos. So, and this is kind of a notice me senpai kind of moment. So a lot of people do that. Okay, cool. Gotcha. Well, glad I'm not in the minority then. So, all right. Well, everyone else, welcome to the I'm Clifford Today show. I know I already said that. We've got a big episode in store for you guys today, because today is going to be my interview with Joshua S. Porter, formerly from Showbread. He's now a writer and a pastor, and I'll gush about him in my intro to him. But first, just to get some things out of the way. Oh yeah, Master Eth says the main core is documentaries about independent artists. So there you go. So if you guys like my channel when I talk about like different creatives and such, go check out him for sure, Master Eth. So album of the week is I already said it. So by Peter Gabriel, and I interestingly enough, I have a variation of the album. I didn't even know it existed, and I found it in a thrift store that doesn't have the album title on it, which I'm pretty sure means that it was like the first print of the album, because little story behind that is that Peter Gabriel, before this album, he didn't like giving titles to his albums. So he had like I know I've talked about this before, but he had like 4 albums that were all self-titled. And then, the big reason is because he didn't like having the words like on the album cover, because it just kind of like distracted from the album art. So, but then his record label was like, dude, you can't just keep making albums with no album title. And so they kind of forced him to have to make a title. So his album title for this one, but I guess the first one didn't even have the album title or his name on there. So that's the one that I got. So I think that's pretty special, don't you think? So yeah, that's our album of the week. So it's a great album, by the way. It's got a lot of classics like Sledgehammer and I was going to say In the Air Tonight. What is wrong with me? No, In Your Eyes. They both start with In, and In Your Eyes is one of my favorite songs of all time. A lot of great songs on there. Red Rain. They're classics. So yeah, before we get to just a couple things to get through. Podwood Forecast is my other podcast that I have with my friend Mitchell, audio-based podcast, and we have our favorite albums of 2023 episode out. And I know I said this last time, but I've been slacking on getting it out. But we have our favorite films of 2023, and I'm hoping that it should be out next week. So be on the lookout for that. Definitely, for sure. Music. I announced a few weeks ago that a new album from me, Sherwood Forest, Lost and Found, which is a bunch of lost demos and unreleased tracks, all put together in one album. You can check that out. It's exclusively on Bandcamp. But I did have a big, huge announcement for you guys, and this ties into what next week is going to be about. So I have a brand new original song, Sherwood Forest song, because I've been working on a lot of new music. This is the first original track in a year or so, and I'm really excited about it because I had a lot of people helping me out with it. And I had an awesome producer working with me, and I'm really stoked about the song. It's called Disentangle, and and it's a song that's about. I seem to be talking about this a lot on this channel. Deconstructing. It's a song about deconstructing. So we'll talk more about that, and that's going to be the main topic for the next episode. I'm going to kind of go through the lyrics and explain it all and just kind of listen through it. But that's going to be out March 22nd, so in 2 weeks. Oh shoot, I should put a link in the description for you guys to like pre-save it and such. I'll do that afterwards. But I'm really stoked. What you can do is, follow Sherwood Forest on Spotify. I'm pretty sure I have links for that in the description. Really excited about it because I also have a bunch of other songs that I'm working on that I can't wait to release. But this one, Disentangle, is going to be, I'm pretty proud of it. So I hope you guys will like it. And that's what we'll talk about in the next episode. So yeah, pre-save, follow. All right, so we have some housekeeping to do just before we get to our awesome conversation with Joshua Porter. So I mentioned in the last episode, and I made a post or two about it, but talked about this show, the future of this show as a live stream. And I'm not going to get too into it because I already talked about it. So that's I just wanted to address it really quickly because you guys had some a couple people responded, and Master ETH included. So I've been struggling with whether I should continue this show as a live stream. Mainly those reasons are technical and also just the fact that not more people watch it after the live stream is over. So so I made some posts about it, and I think I've pretty much decided that this show is going to be pre-recorded, not for the next episode, but probably 2 episodes from now. That's what I'm going to start doing, and I'm going to give it a shot. And Master ETH actually had some helpful commentary. He and I know you're here watching, Ethan, but this is kind of what I do. I just read people's comments. And he said that regarding the question about whether or not you want to continue live streaming, you could instead record the show and then post it as a premiere. That way you get the live chat, but it's not technically a stream. And if you're looking for possible, and he volunteered himself as a possible co-host or guest, and I did give you a response to that. So Ethan, you gotta go and respond to that. And also I had a response from 80s pastor dude. Am I able to pull it up on here? 80s pastor dude who also has a YouTube channel you guys should go check out. He's got some videos on Christian music as well. He's a really cool dude. We conversate on Twitter a lot. And he says whatever works best for you. So it seems that everyone seems to not feel as strongly about one way or another, which is kind of what I felt, especially lately, which is fine. This isn't me like complaining like I need more viewers on my live streams. No, I want to cater to my audience, and if not many people are watching during the live stream and they're more watching after the live stream, that's totally fine. And I still love getting the interactions from you guys in the comments and such. So unless I get a big upcry from this episode, that's basically what the plan is going to be. I'm going to start pre-recording the shows beforehand and then posting them on YouTube. And most likely they'll be posted as a premiere, which means, if you guys don't know what that is, a premiere is basically when I publish a video and you kind of get to watch it live as a premiere, as it's like in real time, even though it's pre-recorded. I've done that before when I had to do pre-recorded episodes because I was gone for that weekend. So that's probably what I'll end up doing, and then that way I can still like interact with you guys in the chat if people are so inclined to chat. But yeah, so I think that's what the plan is going to be, because with all the technical stuff, I'm just so I'm nervous about today's show. Like with Joshua Porter on the show, I'm really nervous about how this is going to go. So fingers crossed, you know, we'll do these next couple episodes live, and then we'll transition into the pre-recorded show. So, but if you guys feel really strongly about it, you're still always free to voice your opinion. So yeah, some more housekeeping. Had some more comments. Oh yeah, my Newsboys and Deconstruction video. You guys were very receptive towards that. I couldn't be more grateful. I really was wondering, you know, like, is this video, like, I kind of thought that it was maybe just going to be a drop in the bucket and just like not really perform that well. But no, you guys really watched it, and it seemed a lot of you guys really resonated with it. So I appreciate it so much. A lot of comments from the last episode. The Knave 5578 says, I loved Newsboys. Oh, I've never heard that song until now. Well, then what kind of Newsboys fan are you? No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for the comment. Mark Rockwell 6670 says, encouraging. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for the encouragement back. 80s Pastor Dude, we already mentioned him. Lost the Plot may be my favorite, but When You Called My Name hits me so hard. The Orphan is a great song. You were 10, I was 34. Wow. That just goes to show you that, you know, people from across different generations can still connect to music. For what it's worth, I saw Voda live and met them. Great show and really cool guys. I kind of feel bad for like hating on Brian O'Leeson I didn't hate on him, but I kind of teased him because, like I said in the video, he was literally only in the band for one album, and then like no one ever really talks about him. But it seems that Voda is a pretty decent band. I checked out some of their music. Not all of it's my thing, but Hard to Believe is a bop. And apparently Ryan has been like playing with Peter at some of his live shows. So that's really cool that he wasn't just there for a minute and with no impact at all. I guess it's because Paul Coleman, he was around for one album and like a few other like singles and tracks that they did, like for their greatest hits album. And I guess I remember him more because he did all those behind the scenes videos, and he's just a lot of fun. I'm friends with on Facebook with him, so he pretty cool. Cool dude. Mixtape Theology. You guys remember I had them on the show a few months ago. They were one of my early guests. Clifford, this video. Wow. Keep it up, brother. Rachel. It's Dr. Rachel. So thanks so much. And if you guys haven't already, check out Mixtape Theology. Check out their book, the devotional they have on 90s Christian music. It's really fun. Freezy Girl says, well done. Thank you, Freezy Girl. Casey Young 1527. Casey Young says, it may be underrated. All I know is it's straight fire. Talking about the song The Orphan. Thanks so much, man. Yeah, so if you haven't already, go check out my album song video. Newsboys and Deconstruction is a little like 16-minute essay that I did on what I think is the most underrated Newsboys song. So go check that out. Also got some more comments on the last episode. So we talked about the top 10 best Christian albums of 2023. I hope you guys checked that out. Andrew Persak says, I didn't hear your top 10 songs list yet, and I am very glad you put Kind by Corey Asbury at number 1, because that's one of my fave songs of the past year as well, because of its honesty and not just having pat Christian or worship lyrics. I don't know if I read that if that was spelled right, but okay. Christian music needs more songs like this and honesty, especially about the negative aspects of life, but also reflecting hope in Jesus. God bless you. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I completely agree. Incredible, powerful song, especially for one that made it in the top 50 charts of Christian music. It's pretty incredible that it was made. But I guess it helps that Corey Asbury already had, some success in music before. But yeah. Garrett Godfrey says, my top 11 albums from 2023 in chronological order. Also, I see that you've been publicly subscribed to me for 3 years. So thanks, Garrett. I appreciate it. So your top 11 albums. I like how you have 11. Anna Pell Freeman's album Certain, Dear Prodigal by Jeremy Licata, Circle Back, Start Again by Tina Boonstra, Thunder 1 EP by Hunter Plake, Glory Hour by Victory, Layers by Joel Ansett, Ghost by Sam Bowman, and Be With You by Color Vault, Hopeful Hearts Club by Jervis Campbell, Between the Shadow and the Sun by Lucy Grimble, Altar Fire 2 by Sam McCabe. And I already responded, but man, a lot of those names were very new to me. So that just goes to show you there's so much music out there that is yet to be discovered. And I'm not sure if that's like all Christian albums. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but that's really cool, man. So thanks for sharing. We got a comment from the one and only Chase Tremaine. Y'all know Chase Tremaine. He was on the show, and he's a big supporter of the channel, and as well as a independent Christian artist and host for Jesus Freak Hideout. You guys know I put his album Accidental Days in my top 10 Christian albums, and so he commented, "Me better than Pioneer? You're a madman." Pioneer is Corey Asbury's album, and I know he liked that album very much. But thank you so much for including me on your list. Regarding the influences you hear, I would say that the classic crime is definitely not one, because I've never really been a fan or active listener. I mean, I've never been huge into classic crime, but there are a couple albums that I really like. May is one of my most obvious influences. Yes, and he talks about May a lot. Their music is drilled far too deep into my DNA, and for me to ever be able to make music that doesn't sound at least vaguely May-ish. And Falling Up is less an artist that I'm influenced by and more of an artist that I just directly steal from. So those were like some of the artists that I compared his music to. But yeah, I like his honesty, how like, yeah, I'm not influenced them. I copy everything that they do. I like the honesty. So, okay. So, that is all for, housekeeping. By the way, I also read, podcast reviews. So if you're on like Apple Podcasts or any other platform that allows reviews, please leave a review and I will read it out loud. Which, as a reminder to everyone, if you guys can't watch the YouTube version for some reason, there's always the audio version on any podcast platform you prefer. All right, so without further ado, let's get right to it. I was especially very excited by this interview because I've enjoyed and loved every interview that I've had so far on this show. It's been super cool. But there is something about, because a lot of the guests that I've had on, I've not known for as long as other guests. Like, I was really excited about my interview with Ronnie Martin from Joy Electric, and this is pretty much on the same level. I talk about it in my conversation with him, but Showbread was one of the earliest like heavy bands that I got into. But they're one of the few that I still listen to that still has has had an impact on me. And I also got to say that, I was incredibly sad when Showbread was show dead, so to speak. You know, they disbanded, even though they came back for a couple of reunions. But I've been happy to follow Josh's career ever since then. He's had a podcast called You Hate Movies, which, you know, I'm always down for a good movie podcast. So that's fun. But he's also had a few books, and I am sad to say that I haven't checked out a lot of his writing, a lot of his fictional stuff, but I plan to. It's just because I'm a slow reader. But I read his book Death to Deconstruction, and it was incredibly powerful for me. And I also read his newest book, which he is promoting now with all its teeth: Sex, Violence, Profanity, and the Death of Christian Art. So we talk about all of that in this episode. We talk about his time in Showbread and a lot of the artistic aspects of that. You know, his mind as a creator and as a Christian, and you know, all things relating to Christian art and all of that. So super excited about this. He was very kind, and so I'm just stoked to show this conversation to you guys. Fingers crossed that everything goes well. Please be praying for me. But okay, so without further ado, here is my conversation with Joshua S. Porter. If I ever lose track of time, you just let me know. You just stop me, be like, hey, stop talking, I gotta go.
Great. Yeah, and that's how the podcast ends.
Yeah. So, you know, and I'm just kind of like just left alone. I'm like, oh, okay, that was Josh Porter, everyone. All right, cool. All right, well, so today we're talking with Josh Porter, aka famous writer Joshua S. Porter, aka Josh Dies, formerly of Showbread. Although, can you really even say formally anymore? Because you released an album called Showbread is Show Dead, announcing that Showbread was over. But then, like 5 years later or so, you released a new secret album, Our Fathers Were Models for God, and do a couple of shows at Furnace Fest, I think you did. So, so is Showbread really show dead, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, for sure this time. For sure this
Yeah,
time.
for sure. Oh,
Yeah.
that's sad to hear.
Well, you know, it's like I did when we stopped doing the band, and I believe it was 2016 when the Showbread is Show Dead record came out, and we played
Yeah, I think so.
a quote unquote final show. But at the time, there were no air quotes. It was, for all intents and purposes, the final show. But you know, I'd at least attempt to not erect too many rigid parameters around something like that.
Right.
It wasn't our plan to go play Furnace Fest. A friend of ours asked us, and I thought that it would be untenable to gather up that group of people, but it wasn't. So, and I don't regret it. It was fun. Yeah, we had a great time. And then after that, it was like, oh, that was a great way to end again. But then they asked us to do it a second time. That record, Our Fathers Were Models for God, wasn't planned as a Showbread record. It was just some friends in the studio from Showbread. But
Right.
The more that we tinkered away on it, the more it took shape. I think this sounds like a really pretentious way to describe it, but we realized that it was a Showbread record the more that we worked on it. Like, I think that this makes the most sense under that. I mean, what is a band like this anyway? It's gone on for so long, and it's had so many different people. The only two people who have been in it the whole time are still the ones who tinker with it when it's time. And we always involve people that have been involved somewhere across the timeline of the band. So it's a bit like Nine Inch Nails. It's like you have a figurehead, or in this case, figureheads, and then like a revolving cast of characters that come in and out when and if the project decides to
Right.
do something. But I'm fine if that's it. I think it was a good run. It was fun.
We did good. So
Yeah.
maybe it's more of like a it's like for now it's gone, but it's like a maybe never say never, maybe
Yeah, I'm sure a great many musicians with retired projects probably look at it the same way, even if they're settled in their decision to have concluded that project when they did. There's probably some reason to um, bring it out of retirement. Unfortunately, there's lots of bad reasons to do it as well. Uh,
sure, yeah.
I think that the whole market for what they now call legacy acts, like
Yeah.
which is this fancy or complimentary way of saying an old band that people used to like, that's not necessarily active at the moment. Um, there's a music festival market for legacy bands, but even something like Furnace Fest, I mean, they treated us very well and they paid us to do it. But it essentially you're bringing people from all over the country, so it pays
Mhm.
for itself with almost nothing left over, and that's totally fine. We understood that that was what we were getting ourselves into. So it's not Showbread was never a profitable project. I honestly don't know. I don't mean to speak out of turn, but I'm not sure if I ever personally profited off the
Mhm.
band. But I mean, I was paid enough to eat food on tour.
Right,
Um,
yeah, you survived.
yeah, and the project was so small that any kind of profit that came into the band as a entity went into the band as an entity to fund things like equipment, nonstop touring, weird studio ideas, or weird live production ideas. So when you're a small band and you tour with, screens and lights and try to add some kind of pageantry and theatricality to the band, that has to come from somewhere. So it's not like I went home with big paychecks. I lived, my
Mhm.
wife and I, when the band kind of ramped down from touring, were living in an apartment that cost $500 in Georgia, in Southeast Georgia, and
Mhm.
it covered that. But I never was able to be like, hooray, a paycheck! I'm going shopping. In my entire tenure of the band of Showbread. So even bringing Showbread out of retirement hasn't been any kind of financially motivated thing, because even the recent record that we made was free, like all records are now. You can
Yeah,
stream them for
true.
free, and even if a million people stream it, I'll probably make like $7 or something, and that's not going to happen. So it's more of a for the heck of it. If there's a good reason and it makes philosophical sense to us, but more so than that, if it just sounds fun. Quite frankly, the real reason that we went and played Fairness Fest, at least for me and the folks that are kind of responsible for the project, was, it would be fun to hang out with those guys for a weekend.
Yeah.
Obviously playing sounds fun, and it was fun, and we care about the songs and the music and all that. But it was more so like, I haven't seen him in forever. Let's go hang out
Yeah,
and
it just sounded like a fun vacation
yep,
sort of.
exactly. So all that was my long way of saying, I'm pretty sure it's over. We'll see.
No, yeah, I totally get it. And I respect that so much. Just it just kind of, shows that you guys were really in it for the music and I guess the movement and whatever you guys were trying to the message that you guys are trying to get out there, with your artistry, which of course we're gonna talk a lot about artistry with your new book, but as a Showbread fan, I'm curious as to what the future is for it, but definitely always interested in the projects that you're doing. But yeah, I was so when I was a young one, cue My Chemical Romance. Um, we didn't have internet in my home growing up or TV, and I also didn't have my own car at the time, so I didn't get around that easily. So, but being a musician and a lover of music, I had to find ways to expand my musical palette, because kind of pretty much what I was growing up on was like, CCM, just regular Christian music. And in fact, we kind of had a rule that we weren't allowed to listen to secular music for the longest time, which I'm sure is the the childhood of a lot of you know kids in my generation. So at the time, my way of discovering new music was walking over to my library that was only down the street from me and go through their CDs. And now whoever was in charge of keeping up their Christian music section must have had really good taste in music, because they had a lot of different kinds of bands, a lot of them from Tooth and Nail even, and that's how I got into a lot of those bands. They had Under Oath, Me Without You, Anne Boleyn, The Chariot, and so that was my way of discovering new different kinds of sounds. And but there was one particular album that caught my attention with its very different and unique album artwork. Is a little album called No Sir, Nihilism is Not Practical. They also had Age of Reptiles and Fear of God, but that was the first one I picked up, and it drew me in instantly. And it had such this, for me, it was such this weird sound and style that I'd just never known before, even for, because I was just getting into a lot of like um harder, heavier stuff, and it was even different for those kinds of music. And I liked it. So that's kind of my history with Showbread. And
Wow,
just
from
kind
the
of,
from the library. That's a new one.
yeah. Yeah,
That's awesome.
that was my way. And also, like, I would also spend like a little bit of time on the computers that they had there. Like, that was it was like 90 minutes tops that I could spend on the internet. And Spotify wasn't really a thing then. There was Pandora, so I discovered some music through Pandora. But yeah, there was just something about like going through CDs and just like, I would just pick up an album based off of its album artwork.
Sure.
Uh, I'm curious, did you guys have a big hand in like what the designs looked like for your albums, and maybe for like all the other projects that you did over the years?
It depends. I think I was probably a terrible headache for every designer involved in record label sanctioned showbread albums. The first Tooth and Nail record that you're talking about, No Sir, Nihilism is Not Practical, we actually um, kind of, uh, without permission, commissioned a designer friend of ours to mock up a cover.
Mm,
And it was, as I recall, and I think I'm getting these details right, but as I recall, I kind of described the scene to this designer. And he was an actual, he wasn't like an amateurist, or he was a professional guy who worked in graphic design, since has since become a prolific designer. But I described to him something, and he mocked it up, and it was imagery based on the opening track. So there was like a llama sitting at a banquet table, and there was kind of a giraffe head on a platter with the flesh stripped off, like the kind of weird head you'd see in a butcher shop in the
yeah,
70s or something, with the blue eyeball glistening in the socket.
yeah.
And it had like a real kind of ransom note quality to it. It was kind of a collage
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic, which I loved, and I wanted something that matched the strangeness of the album title, so that they would kind of work in tandem. You'd be, what the heck is this? And something that
Yeah.
was really left of center from what Tooth and Nail was doing at the time. Because at this point in Tooth and Nail's history, for anyone who cares, they had um, officially hired, previous to this, in-house designers, and that would have been Ryan Clark of Demon Hunter fame
Right.
and
Yeah.
Invisible Children,
Mm-hmm.
and his brother, I believe, was part of their design team, um, which went on to become something called Invisible Creatures, which still make, they're obviously extremely talented and noteworthy designers. but they had created a kind of common aesthetic across the Tooth and Nail records. I don't mean to say it was all the same. It just, like many artists have a certain style and you could see it.
Yeah.
And I was concerned that we would end up with something that looked like all the other records. And our our A&R, who's basically like our informant at Tooth and Nail, was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, he'll make you guys something really cool, but we didn't trust it. So I had this designer friend mock up something, brought it to the label, actually in person, and they hated it. They were like, dude, what is this crap? It doesn't look good, and it's just too aggressive. It's like, we have to sell this in Christian bookstores, and which were a thing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So he connected me with Ryan and said, uh, let let him make something. He can make you something weird if you want something weird. And I pitched a big fit and was like, oh, we want to use our guy. And so that, I think, created this weird, like, you have to work with him, and then anyway, he's the one who designed the cover that's now so well known, of like this, I guess, Victorian looking woman with deer antlers who's going into a machine of some kind.
Yeah.
um, and I'll be honest, when I saw it, I really liked it. So turns out all my
Worked
complaining
out.
was for naught. Yeah, because it did capture that visual, that immediate striking visual weirdness that I wanted, and it was a kind of
Yeah.
simplicity to it. I just wanted like I mean, it's a wild image, but it's just, one stark, strange, and everyone that sees it remembers the lady with the antlers. Um,
Right.
and that became kind of a I don't know, iconography associated with that record and the album cycle. So uh, that was great. It worked out. But then when we negotiated our contract for the second record, I was like, I want to have control over the album art for the second record. So that one, I was the quote unquote art director. I specifically told a friend of mine, um, who worked in visual arts. She painted the cover. uh, I was like, I said, I want, a kind of a humanoid alligator embracing a pregnant belly with a reptilian embryo inside. Well, so it was like
Nothing
explicitly,
too weird.
yeah, yeah. Um, and then I asked her to do the other pieces that appear in the records. I want a Pachycephalosaurus in a dress smoking a cigarette, and I want these paratrooping like cockroaches, all this stuff. And she's like, okay, and she'd paint it. And then Ryan was still involved in kind of the layout and arrangement of all the art and the color palette and all this. So he was still a part of it. By the time we got to Anorexia Nervosa, Ryan uh, Clark again, they were like, let Ryan do the artwork. And he was like, he understood that the album came from a very particular type of influence. In particular, the Nine Inch Nails record, The Downward Spiral, was a huge influence on Anorexia Nervosa. And the artist responsible for the pieces that are photographed, they're actually like physical pieces, but they're photographed in the album art for The Downward Spiral. He's a dude named Russell Mills. And he would like kind of arrange organic materials like feathers and bones, and or in one case a millipede or a seashell, things that kind of captured that visual of a spiral.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to Ryan about that. He was a big fan of Russell Mills. He was like, I absolutely understand what you're going for. I think I could do a really good job on this. So I was like, cool, let's do it. And that was 100% him. I didn't say, other than this is kind of the musical aesthetic and the influence. And he was like, great. And I loved it. So by the time we got to the Fear of God, I was just like, it's this kind of aesthetic. It was all him.
Yeah.
And I loved how that came out as well. So I think like, it sounds like you, I actually place a tremendous amount of value on the visual presentation of a given thing, whether it's a book or an album. I think that bad album art is as bad as bad songs on the record.
Yep.
It
Yeah.
it tampers with um, the overall aesthetic experience of the record. And when an album has like really memorable, striking artwork, it creates a kind of um, ex- listening. It contributes to the listening experience. You kind of visually associate what you've seen with the songs that you're hearing,
Yeah.
and the album cycle itself is kind of adorned with the visuals that you present on the record. So uh, I took that really seriously, and like probably to the point that I annoyed people that are way more capable than I am of. If I could do everything myself, that'd be great. But I'm not a qualified illustrator. That really bothers me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like an amateur at best designer. So sometimes because of budgetary restraints, I just have to do what I have to do DIY. But even then, I exhaust a tremendous amount of time on it. So I all that to say, yes, I had a hand in them in that I was bothering the designers, and in some cases was kind of more directly involved, but in a lot of cases was just like it has to be perfect.
Well, I think that's great because you guys definitely um, have this aesthetic that's not just. I think it's represented well in the artwork of your albums, where your your sound is this particular sound, and so like the artistry has to kind of match that sort of weirdness and I guess chaoticness. And I think it works together well. Like you may not be like an artist in that way yourself, but I respect that you knew what you wanted and you had people to work alongside you that got your vision. And I think that's pretty uh you guys's just desire for that kind of artistry uh in the band's uh life, I guess, is pretty evident. And um I was curious because like you know I've I've noticed in Showbread's lifespan, and I feel like it's pretty evident in what you do now in your writings and such, is that you have this knack to you seem to really like challenging people, including uh like your the showbread fans. You seem to really like challenging your fans' expectations. Like almost every time that you released an album, it's like a new album is like, oh, this is not what I expected. And now as a writer, it seems that you're writing books that probably have some way to offend or challenge anyone who picks up the book. Like I picked up Death to Deconstruction expecting to for it to be like this uh a challenge to people who are deconstructing and all that, and I didn't expect myself to be challenged myself. So I'm curious, do you like or get excited by maybe confusing or challenging or maybe even upsetting others, or are you just trying to get a reaction from them, or is this just you just being you? I hope that question makes sense.
No, totally.
All right. Well, sorry for that sudden interruption, but it is high time for a break. Sorry, it usually doesn't take this long. I had a bit of a longer intro before the interview started, and, so all that. So we have to get into a break right now, but don't go away because we have some really important and cool stuff to get to. I hope you guys are enjoying the conversation, by the way. But we have an interesting, really cool spotlight segment for you guys. And I don't normally do this, but I have a sort of like preface for this next spotlight segment because it's a really cool artist by the name of Chris Bernstorf, and he's actually a spoken word artist, which is we haven't had that on the show before. I've talked about Levi the Poet before, but I'm sure that Levi the Poet is a big inspiration for him. But he told me the song that he wanted for the spotlight is like like if you don't want to do this song this track, it's okay because it has some it's not really explicit. There's no cussing in it, but some of the subject matter of the track is a little detailed because the track is literally called Dirt. and some of the things that he brings up is very maybe too much for like a young audience. So if you have any kids while you're watching right now, maybe turn it off or have them go to the other room, like get out. And maybe if you're not really down for that kind of stuff, I think that this track goes along perfectly with what I'm talking about with Josh Porter about Christian art and all that kind of stuff. So, but I think that this track is honestly, even though it's called Dirt, I think it's very beautiful in the way that it portrays like what humanity is, but who God is. So just a little bit of forewarning there for you guys. I mean, there is we have the Podwood Forecast ad, but I just wanted to let you guys know, if you don't like it, then skip ahead or turn it off. But I encourage you guys, if you're not easily offended by that kind of stuff, to stick around and check it out. So I think you guys will hopefully like it. So, all right. Well, don't go away. We'll be right back with Josh Porter after these short messages. This time on the Podwood Forecast. They're going to talk like
Pop open your can of beans and pop a squat. This is going to be a good episode.
What are your thoughts on controversial pop icon Klaus Schwab?
Who? Let me look up the lyrics again.
For those of you who do not
funny.
live in Illinois, there's a small town called Decatur, and it has a bad reputation because it smells bad. The reason is because of the factories there, but it just like gives a bad stink in the whole town. The whole town stinks. Sufjan Stevens, Illinois.
Illinois.
That's your number.
Yeah, Illinois is my fifth favorite album of 2023. They're just progressing their progressions. And
they're progressing their progressions.
They're progressively
in a very progressive
progressing
way.
their progressions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, very progressive in that way. So
Yes.
you just come up to Shaky Graves like, hey, your album was almost number 2.
It was
on my
almost my
list.
second favorite
Second
album of all time.
favorite.
It's
like
okay though. Your last album was so much better. I'm sure you'd love to hear that.
one of my all-time favorites of all time.
Yeah.
Already messed up. 2025 definitely going to be my year.
Yeah.
Though.
That's so good.
Listen to the Podwood Forecast wherever podcasts are found. Hey guys, thanks for watching or listening to the I'm Clifford Today show. Right now we're going to take a few minutes to listen to this week's spotlight artist, Chris Bernstorf, and his track entitled Dirt from his album It's All Joy. You can find his music on any platform you prefer, including Bandcamp, where you can purchase his music and support the artist directly. Links provided in the description of the episode.
Don't ever forget that God 50-50'd his way to Earth down an unwed teenage girl's vagina. He manualed out into the backwoods of the Roman Empire. He did it on purpose. For a time, he had to have his butt wiped. He had an umbilical cord and someone cut it. Mary might have pooped during the whole thing. Many women do. Don't wipe away the blood and amniotic fluid when you remember him. Burn your Lysol wipes as incense. Anachronistic hygiene is a sin. God incarnated himself to work a day job with his dad without AC and sandals. He came at a bad time. Pre-MySpace, flyers at the mall, DIY touring, and word of mouth, the only ways to spread the good news. He did it all on purpose, took his time, slow rolling down Woodward, letting the lights chorus, not missing a photon of it all. To be saved, Jesus said we must eat his flesh and drink his blood. He said it before the Last Supper, so there was no grounding for the metaphor, just crazy. Eat the scroll. God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Many of America's founding fathers were deists, which means they rejected Jesus as the Messiah. The Bible calls such people antichrist. These antichrists helped found America. I have been ashamed of Jesus before men. The Bible says Jesus will be ashamed of such people before God. God genocided the Amalekites. The United States deposed Jacob R. Benz, a democratically elected leader, for its own gain. I have masturbated more times than I've had sex with my wife. Jesus asked God not to die, and God said no, so he died. Drink it raw. If the truth sets us free, then every piece of truth must be a notch in the key. Don't sand it down. We need it all. God's strength is made complete in our weakness. Jesus called a woman a dog and then healed her daughter. Jesus befriended his betrayer, knowing what he'd do. Jesus made a way for pedophiles to go to hell. heaven. Heaven is not a meritocracy. He chooses whom he chooses. Jesus said he only has whom the Father gives him. If I'm honest, I don't always like the team. Don't look away. Knowing Nagasaki and the blasphemies of my inner thoughts and the Denver Spider-Man and the Khmer Rouge, fraternity hazing in the Congo Free State, God killed his son, himself, to buy back all the dirt he'd put his breath in. He did it on purpose. The pen didn't slip. He didn't stutter. Let him shape you. Sometimes love is unrequited and looks like wrestling and blood sweating and scars and a hole in the side that you keep. Sometimes holiness looks like a limp. Existence cascades before me in endless branches of flickering TV screens, a wall of static snow, free will and the Spanish and Portuguese conquest of Latin America, my mom's fear and child pornography, the dads that leave and the dads that don't, but who can't straighten their crippled spirits back out once they've been mangled by failure and circumstance, my friends who are still trying to straighten their own backs out from the passed down pressure, EDM and mint green and Belle Isle at sunset and Cava and the small of my wife's back, where my love for her pools, the day I got carjacked at the McDonald's on Mac in 75, the fact that all of my roommates came to pick me up, the kindness of Andrew's coat on my shoulders because the guy took mine, flower picking outside Traverse in June, crying at the counter of that coffee shop in the Phoenix airport as I reflected on all I've been given, all of Walt Whitman's lists and his slouch, Go Home by Julian Baker, the Holocaust and all the pain and love I can't reconcile. It all cascades endlessly and beyond my reach and impenetrable and too large for me, and yet Jesus parts it all with one hand like a curtain between rooms and walks right up to me and looks me in the eye, and it's love and he doesn't blink.
If you're a Christian artist and would like to hear your music in the Spotlight segment, send an email to the address in the description of the episode. And now, back to the show.
All right, we're back. We're going to get back into Joshua Porter. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. I hope you guys like that Spotlight segment. Again, I had that little, forewarning. Also, so thanks Chris Bernstorf for being for supporting the show and being the Spotlight artist. He seems like a really, really cool guy, really cool interactions with him, and he's got great stuff. If you're a fan of spoken word, check it out. And I hope that track was, really gave you something to chew on. And also, I tried to solve my problem with the whole. I mentioned last time about the Spotlight segment how it seems that like the video that I always make, the visualizer, the album art just sometimes always seems to like be in someone's face. So I'm like, I got to figure out some other solution for this. And so that's the one that I came up with the picture frame and everything, and having it switch between the picture of the artist and the album artwork. If you guys didn't realize, that's what was going on. So hope you like it. If you guys don't like it, let me know. Otherwise, I'm probably just gonna stick with that format for the Spotlight segment. So yeah, and also again, if you are a Christian artist, independent Christian artist, or an artist who happens to be a Christian, and you want your music, or even like if you are a spoken word artist, like we got room for that too. You can reach out to me. I got an email in the description. I've realized I should probably like figure out some sort of website for people to put in submissions, because it's probably not a great idea for me to put my email out there. I don't know. I'm not that big, so I'm not that worried about it. Sorry, I got a beard hair in my mouth. But all right, so enough chit chat. Beard hair. Let's get right back to it. Conversation with Joshua Porter. All right, let's go.
Last night, I'm a pastor preaching a sermon at my church, and I read a quote from one of my favorite artists that shows up in the book, the singer-songwriter and novelist Nick Cave. And he argued that uh, without that kind of confrontation, without that level of challenge lobbied at the audience, there can be no real growth. There can be no real reaction of value, and I tend to embody that philosophy when I make things. It sounds like I'm, you know, giving myself some kind of grandiose power that I don't have. But I think personally, I guess that the critical way of putting it would be like you do things for a reaction. But honestly, that's fair. I do. I think that the best art. I'm not saying I make the best art, but I think that the best art elicits a real reaction. So I do things for a reaction. I don't attempt to do things for a cheap reaction or for like a knee jerk reaction or for like kind of superficial shock value. Um, but I do think that aesthetically speaking, there is an interesting component to a piece when there is shock value or when there is something that catches an audience off guard or repels them in some way or kind of puts guards up. You know, a lot of people that were super ticked about Death to Deconstruction didn't read the book. They were furious about the title, uh, even though you know if you read it, that term takes on layered meanings throughout the book, and then by the end of the book, it means something that you didn't expect it to mean. Spoilers for Death to Deconstruction, but I designed it that way, and the publisher fought me the entire time. They're like, "Can we please call it anything else? People are going to misunderstand the meaning, or it's going to alienate a certain group that you probably would like to talk, you know, like reach." And I thought, of course, it's going to cause a reaction, but that's an interesting to me. That's an interesting part of the aesthetic. I've always liked confrontational titles, you know, or titles that are kind of like, what the heck is that supposed to mean? And I liked the idea of, you know, both like you said. So case in point, you're a case study of someone that feels attacked by the title, being like, oh, I'm going to read this and disagree, and then finding something to agree with, and lots of stuff to disagree with, I'm sure, but realizing like, oh, it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. That's interesting. That kind of experience is really rewarding to me. I've had that with art that I appreciate. Or on the other side, you know, like someone being like, yeah, oh yeah, heck yeah, Death to Deconstruction, I'm all over that. And then they read it and find something that's like, oh, I don't know how this makes me feel. And, you know, I like that kind of um, confronting a certain group and disarming another group only to confront them further along in the experience. Uh, I think that you know the kind of that's just what I appreciate as a consumer of art and entertainment. You know, my philosophy has always been I just make the thing that I would like personally. You know, I make the kind of music I would like to listen to. I write the kind of books I would like to read, um, and if someone else likes it, that's wonderful. And if they don't, that's fine too. Obviously, it's decidedly not for everyone. Even in a project like writing Christian nonfiction, which isn't purely creative, because you know there's an audience in mind. I'm actually attempting to reach someone and engage meaningful ideas in an explicit kind of way. You know, but even that, I approach more like a novelist. I want to write something that's not necessarily going to give up all its ideas at a surface level reading. Hopefully, it makes sense, and you know you can engage the ideas in a meaningful way. But there's also a sense of like, I'm not sure exactly what I think about that, or where this is going, and that's something that I fought the editor on all throughout the process of writing. She's like, you need to clarify exactly what you mean by this, and I would say, you know, I think sometimes ambiguity is a useful teaching tool, but it's certainly an interesting aesthetic. Ambiguity is, and ambiguity is alienating. You know, people like tell us what you mean explicitly. So, a title like Death to Deconstruction, what do you mean by that? What kind of deconstruction? Are you down on this? Are you one of these other people? Like, you know, tell us whose team you're on, and that to me is interesting. So all that to say, yes, I'm not saying that all good art is confrontational and controversial. Lots of really meaningful art and art that's made, like an impact on me isn't divisive at all necessarily. I mean, you could find someone who doesn't like it, but for the most part, it's palatable and uplifting. I think there's a wonderful place for that kind of art. Um, but the kind of art that I like most personally is controversial, often divisive. Even musicians, the kind of musicians that have made the biggest impact on me are the kinds that, if a new album's coming, you honestly don't know what it's going to sound like, and you don't know if it's going to cater to your preferences or be the kind of thing that's like, what in the world is this? You don't know if it's going to jump out of the stereo and amaze you right away, or be the kind of thing where you're like, oh, I think I will like this, but I have to listen to it more. That's interesting to me. And that's the kind of thing that I attempted to emulate. I think naively in the beginning, because we assumed, or at least I assumed, that the basic simplistic philosophy from album 1 to album 2 was like, okay, the first record is really hyper and like chaotic and all over the place. The next one should be straightforward, because that's a 180. It should be like hooky rock songs, because we didn't do that last time, so let's do it this time. And then the next record is a goth industrial album. The thing was just like, we did the other thing, let's never do that again. Let's do something different. And obviously you're bringing in shades of your influences across all the music that you write, so bits and pieces sound like other records, of course. But I think I naively assumed lots of people like that, because I love that. I love, from one Bowie record to the next, like him literally creating a new persona, a new genre, and embodying a new genre for each album cycle. I thought that other people liked that too, and of course there are people that do, and of course it could be that you like that just fine. You just don't like the genre we chose. That's fine too. But the backlash was really like, what the heck? Do what you did before. You know what I mean? And I was like,
Right.
well, that's boring. Who wants that? I don't want to do that. I'd rather have no fans than do the same thing over and over again. So that was kind of the first experience of like, whoa, people aren't into that. And we actually had a moment in time, a conversation where we decided like, well, we could cater to these expectations entirely. We could at least cater to them a little bit, or we could say, forget it. We're just going to do what it is that we want to do. And we chose the latter. We're just do what we want to do, and people will work out whether or not that they like it. And unfortunately, not fortunately or unfortunately, that itself is a confrontational aesthetic as well. And it's by design. So yes, I like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's weird. I remember because I wasn't really a Showbread fan as you guys were releasing a lot of those albums. I kind of came on to the bandwagon a little late, and I remember being really surprised when I heard, I don't, it might have been you talking about it on a podcast or something, but I was surprised when I learned that there was that kind of a reaction with Age of Reptiles. It's like, I don't know, I love that one too. Like, yeah, it's different, but like you, I also, it's sort of almost like an expectation uh where I love it when artists that I like do something different with
Yeah.
each album.
Mhm.
And there's some bands that I like where they don't really do that, and it's like, okay, but I mean, I still like what you do. um I think one good example, some people make fun of me, but one of my favorite bands was Mumford and Sons, actually. And they actually got flack for a couple of albums for, because it was kind of a joke that like, oh, Mumford and Sons, they just do the same thing with each album, even though they had only released 2 albums so far. And then with their third album, they decided, you know what, we're gonna get rid of the whole folk aesthetic. We're gonna get rid of the banjo, and they just basically made a whole like rock album.
Oh.
And then like there was backlash against that. They're like, where's the banjo, where's the folk music, I don't like this. So it's like, it seems that it's, you kind of have to like, you decide what crowd you want to try to appease, I guess. Do you want to appease the ones that just want you to do the same thing over and over, or do you just want to do you also want to show that you can do other things other than the same thing? It seems that, you know, sometimes you have to decide to play to one crowd or another. Like, do you just keep doing the same thing that you're doing to try to appease that crowd, or do you, you know, push yourself to get out of the box, you know, so that you're not like boxed in creatively?
Totally.
Do you find that that's been kind of the case for you?
Yeah, you know, I think that there are artists whose repetition uh, is a strong suit. I think that people buy AC/DC records because they know it's going to sound like an AC/DC record.
Right.
You know, um, across a long discography of AC/DC records, and I think there are certain genres that can tend to paint an artist into a corner, um, and and then create a scenario in which the only possible recourse is to languish in repetition forever, or to reinvent yourselves, you know, like at least crossing a genre barrier a little bit at a time. And then you watch the careers of certain artists who attempt that and achieve it successfully. And by successfully, I mean maintaining some sort of audience in the process, and also successfully meaning like aesthetically it seems authentic. That's subjective, but I think you know what I mean. And then there are others who kind of don't, or try it and then reverse course. You know, uh, I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but I haven't personally been a Blink 182 fan since I was in high school. Like I had those first two records, I enjoyed a lot. I haven't listened to them. Maybe I still love them. I don't know. And I saw Blink 182 at a club show prior to the Enema of the State album, before Travis Barker was in the band. Um, and that's a band that fundamentally reinvented itself, uh, did all kinds of stuff. And it was one of those things like, oh, it's not for me personally. Like I wasn't bent out of shape about it, but I was like, oh, it's not for me personally. But it seemed to find an even wider audience. So, and then there are other bands that are kind of within that same wheelhouse. I think MXPX is an example of one that seemed to sort of mature to a certain point, and then, you know, this is obviously just my personal opinion, but they have an album called The Ever Passing Moment that to me is the apex of the MXPX discography. It's kind of like and that's the moment that you cross the threshold of the genre, and you maintain shades of your previous aesthetic, but essentially became a band influenced, I guess, primarily by Elvis Costello. But it's like MXPX doing Elvis Costello, and it creates this new genre that wasn't there before, or at least not for them. And I thought, like, wow, how amazing! And the lyricism became more introspective, and existential, but still, you know, within the MXPX aesthetic. And to me, it was like, man, they did it. They crossed the threshold of their aesthetic and did not only something that's still cool, like this is the best it's ever been, um, but then, you know, I don't know exactly. They could tell you whether or not people liked that or not. I don't know what the fan reaction was. But the next record, it was firmly back within the kind of pop punk songs about girls, um, even influenced more by something like Good Charlotte than Elvis Costello. So it seemed to me like, and you know, this is conjecture on my part, but I was like, oh, maybe they didn't like it, maybe the fans didn't like it, but and then since then it's been that kind of thing. It was like, oh, we'll just stay a pop punk band. So you know, the limitations of genre, especially if you start in a genre so specific, whether that's something like pop punk or metalcore, you know, was the peer group that we had when we were really actively touring. To me, those seemed like, man, if you change even a little bit, people are going to be like, what the heck is this? We at least had the advantage of starting weird enough that we probably could have stayed in that vein a little bit longer, you know, and milked that kind of. There was a niche audience for bands like The Locust, or, you know, Blood Brothers or something like that, Botch, these kind of hyper chaotic, um, I believe they called them spazcore bands back then. And but instead we were just like, nope, new genre entirely. Now we're an alternative rock band. Um, so I think, but if we hadn't done that, I don't think I would have liked to have kept doing it. To me, it was like either do something different or this isn't fun
Right.
to me. You know,
It can get a little stale, I'm sure, over
yeah,
time.
yeah. I mean, even playing, you make a whole record that sounds totally different, but then you go on tour and we continued to play songs from the previous record, and even that gets old. You get to the
Sure.
point where, and lots of bands are like this, where you're just like, I would rather just play the new stuff because that's the most fun for us.
Right.
But other people want to hear something besides new stuff, so
Sure.
it becomes a tug of war with the audience.
Sure, yeah, I totally get you. Yeah, so moving on to your new book, I mean, it's not like a complete 180, but we're talking about
Oh, totally, yeah.
art and pushing boundaries and such. And I know this is kind of like a cliche interviewer question. It's like, so what drew you to writing this new book? But I'm really curious, like you being an artist yourself, I can just kind of imagine, like, just kind of get in your brain that like there must have been something that just kind of pulled you towards writing this and getting all these thoughts and these feelings out there. So what was that for you? Like what drew you to writing with all its teeth?
Well, it began as unformed arguments, or good-natured unformed debates, if you like, with friends and family over years, because as one might guess, if they know anything about the kind of stuff that I've made over the years, I've always been drawn to, as per our conversation earlier on, I've been drawn to the kind of art that is often divisive or alienates a certain kind of audience, and not just because it's different album to album, but because it's obscene or vulgar or offensive. And like you, but a little different. I was kind of raised in the 80s in Southeast Georgia in a conservative Baptist church. And I had this weird overlap where part of my upbringing was very much a product of the culture and the time. I'm not allowed to watch The Simpsons, or my parents are protective about what kind of music that I listen to. But then on the other hand, my dad was a 70s rocker guy. So he would sneak me, he bought me my first non-Christian album, and it was the Aerosmith record, Get a Grip. And he actually said, this is not a good thing to do, by the way, but he said to me on the way home in his truck, he handed the cassette tape over to me and said, just don't tell your mom.
Right.
And that was a formative record for me, like my first like rock record that wasn't part of the kind of like Christian industry. My mom was like a fine art person. She was really into literature, still is, and like would give me, at a very young age, copies of poems by Sylvia Plath, or novels by Franz Kafka. And that was the kind of like, oh, this is weird, and it's unconventional, and in some cases dark and upsetting. And those were the formative, like, creative experiences of my childhood and adolescence. That whether it was the Ren and Stimpy show as like a 10-year-old and being like, whoa, this is so outrageous and obscene, and something about it really speaks to the aesthetic, really speaks to me, or reading novels at a young age, or rock records that my dad would he would used to put on his vinyl copy of Queen's A Night at the Opera at home, and my brother and I would sing along to it, and we would have conversations like, we should start a rock band. So it was like a weird, like, inconsistent Christian household in which, like, oh, rated R movies are off the table, and you can't listen to this is too over the top of whatever, like whatever the culture was, kind of what was in the spotlight of culture at the moment, that's bad, we're going to ban that from the house. But then there was literature and there was rock music. And so since I was formed by those experiences really early on, all throughout my adolescence and early adulthood, I was having conversations with other people who were Christians. I'm a Christian as well, and they would challenge me and say, like, how can you paraphrasing, in some cases asked this point blank, how can you watch that and be a Christian? How can you listen to that and call yourself a Christian? And early on, it was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Maybe am I off? Like, is there something sinful about what I'm doing? I guess I haven't really given it a ton of thought. This is just the kind of stuff I've been drawn to. Maybe I should think more. And I started to think through things and study the scriptures for those kinds of answers. And um, I was surprised by what I found. At this point, it's still like unformed and amateurish, but I would bring some of that back into the conversations. I was saying, well, okay, well, what do we do about this in the scriptures, and what do we do about the rich history of art throughout the Christian tradition, much of which is decidedly unpleasant, and there was still a lot of pushback, and so when I became a pastor, I was having regular conversations with. At this point, I felt as if my perspective and my theological position was decently formed, and I had a mentor and a pastor friend who was very much of the, if it's at all iffy, just don't watch it, don't listen to it, and has a what one might describe as a very conservative view on art and entertainment. And he and I would argue all the time. I mean, as buddies, like it became Deadpool. The film Deadpool became the linchpin argument where we would use it as the example every time. I was like, okay, so back to Deadpool, and then unpacked, whether or not it was ever. He was of the opinion that it's never okay for a Christian to watch a movie like Deadpool. I'm all right, well, let's go and unpack that. And the emails started to get so long, and the conversations over coffee started to get so long. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to try to write it all down and put it in one place. And so I took a couple of years to study and read a lot of really boring books about art history and art in the early Christian tradition, tons of theology on art, all the biblical stuff on art, and attempted to distill that down into something that was accessible, readable, and makes an argument not just for whether or not it's appropriate for a Christian to watch Deadpool, because that'd be a blog at best, but to try to make like an argument for the inherent God-imbued value of art itself, and then make an argument for how that value spreads out across art that's uplifting and encouraging and redemptive, and I argue in the book, to often art that's upsetting or obscene or vulgar. And I make that case from the Bible, and then from, kind of the art history and popular culture. But it was really like one of those things. Is like, man, this really means a lot to me. I can't count how many times I've had this conversation. I would like to be able to say, well, I wrote a whole book on it. So if it's helpful, there you go. You know what I mean?
Just hand them the book, right? Conversation over. That's cool. And yeah, I read it. I actually got around to finishing it yesterday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing that, by the way.
No, yeah, absolutely. Like I knew. I mean, I knew it was the book for me because I resonated so much with it and related to a lot of the questions that you were, putting out there, because I've also kind of struggled with that. I've always been kind of in a weird in between place when it came to my faith, my beliefs, my ideology, and also the things that I enjoy. Like for me personally, I'm pretty conservative, both like politically and religiously. But I've always had this frustration with the people that believe the same things that I believe, where they didn't really have the same appreciation for art that I did. I mean, at least it seemed like it. A lot of the movies and the music that you mentioned in the book is like, oh yeah, I love that movie. Like I love the whole section that you talked about, The Witch. It's like, oh yeah, I love that movie. I love those kinds of movies, just like weird, bizarre, out there, but also very artistic and challenging. And I would struggle though, because I'd be around people who would be like, you can't, like, you shouldn't watch stuff like that, or you shouldn't listen to music like that. You shouldn't, you have a lot of pages talking about like sex in art. A lot of the movies that I like just happen to have, those kinds of scenes in it. And so fellow Christians would be like, oh, you shouldn't watch that because it'll cause you to sin. And it's like, maybe, I mean, I don't know, I definitely have my issues with lust and everything, but when I watch these movies, it doesn't really feel like I'm sinning or anything. I'm really just watching it because I really appreciate what the movie's trying to say. I appreciate the artistry and all that, and I like the fact that it challenges me in a way. So I really resonated with, I mean, not saying that you were, I like the fact that you're more just kind of posing questions rather than like giving like actual answers, like don't watch this or do watch this. Was that ever kind of like a struggle for you to not have those like very defining statements?
Well, no, because I don't think you can possibly. I think, and the argument that I make across the book is that um, that application is so subjective from person to person, that it's, I think personally, kind of a fool's errand for me to say this is off the table for everyone, even if it seems totally obvious. Or to say, oh, come on, grow up. You can all handle the witch, or whatever. Which, in the grand scheme of things, and at least to me personally, like, it wasn't that big a deal. But I know other people that have a very different sensibility,
Mm-hmm.
and who probably would have been absolutely terrified to watch something like The Witch.
Oh,
So,
sure.
it's that would be immature of me to be like, you'll be fine, just check it out. What I'm arguing for instead is to for more Christians to acknowledge and accept the level of complexity and nuance required to practice what I call the spiritual discipline of art appreciation. And to do that, of course, you need discernment. But discernment's faulty. We're messed up. So you also need Holy Spirit conviction, like allowing God to speak into your life and say, "Hey, you need to stop this." Um, that goes beyond just your personal common sense. But again, we're flawed, so we can mishear God or we can ignore Him willfully. So I'll also argue that community accountability is essential. Having your life open to other disciples of Jesus that speak into your life and challenge you and say, like, "Hey, is this healthy? Is this wise? We know what you're like." And I can make a lot of really easy, fast examples just for time's sake. Like if you have someone in your community who struggles with a crippling pornography addiction, and they go in and they say like, "Oh, this weekend I was watching this movie that's known to be just replete with all kinds of explicit sexuality," then of course your community would be within their rights to be like, "Oh, hey, is that a good idea? Tell me more about like your experience." Like, and call them out, quite frankly. They'd be like, whatever, like, well, that's not good enough, whatever. We should be approaching all of how we appreciate art and entertainment with those things: discernment, Holy Spirit conviction, and the accountability of community. And I believe personally, and I've experienced personally, that there are times when even those among us who feel as if we have a really strong constitution for offensive art will probably find something that's like, this is not a good idea for me. Um, Art that goes too far in a certain direction or speaks to a particular weakness of ours, that it's just not wise for us to consume it without consequence of any kind. Of course, there should be a tremendous amount of sensitivity and discernment exercised in the way that Christians consume and appreciate art. I am not advocating for like anything goes, and if you like it, then it's great for you. What I am advocating for is a kind of open-mindedness that can sit next to one Christian can sit next to another, and someone say like, "You know what? I was actually spiritually impacted by this horror film or this, Southern Gothic novel," and have the other person say, "Tell me more about that. What is that? And in what ways did it speak to you?" And they might not necessarily share the same convictions or the same impact from the same given piece body of work, but there's less of a, ooh, that has you fill in the blank in it, therefore it's inappropriate for all Christians at all times. I think when we apply that kind of logic that says, oh, if it depicts, something like extreme violence, or if it depicts evil, hatred, if it depicts debauchery, even if it depicts sexuality and sexual sin, well, then it's inappropriate for a Christian to watch it or read it or listen to it. And then that puts that Christian at terrible odds with the scriptures, because all throughout the Bible, God initiates, creates, commissions, commands all kinds of different genres of art that in many cases contain all of these elements. The Bible itself, I believe as a disciple of Jesus, is of course inspired by God. It's authoritative for disciples of Jesus, firmly within like the Orthodox Christian tradition on the high view of Scripture. But it's also a work of art. It's a work of supreme literary supremacy. And so the Bible itself, as art, contains these, vile depictions of history. But even if you're like, well, that's history, that's documenting events, you have poems with about like horrible things, in some cases violence against children or hatred, beheading enemies. You have parables about gouging out your own eye, self-mutilation, or a disobedient servant dismembered by his master. You have like visions from God of horrifying, grotesque things that communicate beautiful, redemptive things, like a valley of corpses that suddenly lurch back to life and grow muscles and veins, and God's like, that's what I'm going to save you. And that's how God chooses to communicate the beauty of salvation. Even Jesus's first disclosure of what has become now the sacrament for disciples of Jesus, the Lord's Supper or communion. When he introduces it, he does so through the metaphor of cannibalism, and doesn't explain himself, and it alienates, we read, most of his audience. So I think that when you apply that logic that, oh, if it's art or an aesthetic thing that depicts, say, violence, a shocking violence, depraved violence, well, then that's not really, you can't be watching that as a Christian. Like, okay, well, what are you going to do with these poems? What are you going to do with these parables? What are you going to do with these visions from God? And case in point, like I'm teaching on art right now at my church, and a couple of Sundays ago, I did a teaching during which I read from a selection of some of the Bible's more extreme aesthetic moments. And that included just a 3 or so minutes of like ancient history and some of the vile stuff we read there, but also, like I said, poems, parables, visions, purely aesthetic decisions, performance art from the prophets, that kind of thing. And people were ticked. Someone left the room. I got angry emails. It's like, you can't, this was overwhelming. It was inappropriate. And I didn't give my opinions. I didn't get into exactly how that all comes to bear on my, theology and what I say in the book. Most of it was just reading from the Bible. And in some cases, I didn't even read the text. I just talked about what it says. I've got young people in the room, so I talked about how we have an entire collection of erotic love poetry that most scholars agree is intended to be read and enjoyed. And I'm like, and it's in the scriptures. And if you read that thing, it's pretty wild. Obviously, the analogies are dated because it's ancient Near Eastern love poetry, but it's pretty erotic. And so I didn't read passages from Song of Songs, but I just said that. And so even just talking about what's in the Bible was enough to make this room full of seasoned Christians kind of squirm and where's this going? And so I think, case in point, if you approach art in such a way where nothing that's upsetting or divisive or offensive or obscene can possibly have any spiritual value for Christians, well, then what are you going to do with the Bible? And if we allow for the, what I would say is kind of an inarguable fact that God seems to find some kind of value in that kind of art, at least from time to time, well, then does that mean that disciples of Jesus in their spiritual maturity and formation can also find value in art that might be considered obscene or vulgar, if God does as well? And I know that for a lot of people, that's kind of like if not just new information, also runs contrary to what people like you and I have been taught by culture or by our families or upbringings or church experience by really well-meaning, intelligent. I'm not saying like, oh, they're so dumb and crooked. I mean like well-meaning, wonderful Christians who like this is the world that we, especially as Protestant Christians in the West and in America, our tradition is kind of dispensed with art unless it's worship songs and kind of like cozy Christian bookstore home furnishings. Um, but the Christian tradition as a whole has just an incredible rich history of not just elaborate art and aesthetics and pageantry, liturgical vestments and icons and rituals and symbols, but also like dark, somber, upsetting rituals and practices. I mean, the Christian tradition has an entire motif throughout art history called memento mori, in which artists would disguise symbols of death in their paintings just to remind the viewer, the consumer of the art, like you're going to die one day. I mean, it's still in like European traditions of the Christian movement around the world. They keep skulls of saints and reliquaries and festoon their cathedrals with the bones of human beings. You know what I mean? It's like, and we're not an island, unfortunately. We like to think as though we are American Protestant Christians. Like we're the ones who finally figured the whole thing out. And I am one. I'm American and Protestant, so I'm all those things for a reason. But I don't want to kind of shutter my ears to the rich history of the Christian tradition that has always had tremendous amount of room for art and upsetting art. So I think these are questions worth asking, especially for those of us who, I honestly don't know. I don't mean to be dramatic or hyperbolic, but I don't know what kind of art I would have made. I don't know if I would have been a musician who sang about Jesus or would have become a pastor or an author had it not been for works of art that other Christians might find upsetting, but that inspired me to become an artist myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's wow, there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I love it. That's pretty much a good summary of what's in the book, and bring up a lot of good points, just talking about, just the Bible itself and also just Christian history. Just you'll find those, those examples of things that were, maybe we accept now because like, it's been in Christian tradition for years, but at the time they were probably pretty offensive and out there.
Yep.
Like lots of depictions of like in the artistry, Christian art, lots of naked people, that's for sure.
It's true.
but
Yeah.
now
This is
but
the
now it's
Sistine
okay because it's
Chapel. Yeah.
yeah, but now it's okay because it's art.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we've moved beyond it. That's fine. That doesn't do anything for anyone. But we have movies but even reading back through art history, it was kind of hilarious to me to find that something like the Sistine Chapel has been divisive the entire time. There were people
Right.
then that were offended by the nudity. There's still people who are offended by that nudity. So it's not exactly as simple as to say like, well, come on, that's ridiculous. No one, everybody has different kinds of sensibilities and weaknesses,
Hmm.
and so like blanket statements don't account for that kind of nuance, and they're not helpful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. I really enjoyed reading through it. It even made me think of questions that I had never thought of before. So I would highly recommend it. There's like so much that I would love to get into, but I know we got a time restraint. I had asked you in the email before we talked about doing this segment that I do with the guests about naming their 5 favorite Christian albums, but you probably, I don't know if you even have any time to go through those today.
Well, I mean, I did think about it, but here's the question. I'm assuming what you mean by that is Christian albums colloquially, as in, within the Christian music industry. I'm not trying to be a butthead, but, like,
No, no, no. Yeah, it's very vague. Like on purpose. It can be anything. Like up to your interpretation. It can be
mm,
anything from like say anything from Tooth and Nail, anything from like mainstream Christian. It can even be like well, this artist wasn't really in the Christian mainstream, but they're like they're an obvious believer, and that's in their music. So that's kind of up to you, and if you really even have any time today.
Oh yeah, you ready for? I'm going to do some rapid fire ones. And
Okay, let's do it.
I saw that and I thought that was a fun idea, and I thought I'm not going to try to overthink it because then I end up. Other people are more mature than me and they can probably be honest. But if I'll probably try to curate a list that sounds cooler and is less honest. So
Sure.
off the top
Yeah.
of this is sincerely off the top of my head, believe it
All
or
right.
not. I'll say, uh, well, first of all, Amy Grant, Heart in Motion,
Okay.
a record that I talk about several times in my art book and
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
listen to. I think a headphones listen of Heart in Motion is an amazing experience, a perfect pop record. Um, I'll say from the Tooth and Nail pantheon, I would probably pick Shorthand Operation by 90 Pound Wuss,
Okay.
which is kind of like a post-punk masterpiece, and lots of lyrical content explicitly about Jesus
Mm-hmm.
and the Christian experience. Um, I would say my kind of unconventional pick would be Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, The Boatman's Call, which is my favorite Nick Cave record. And he sings a lot about Jesus on that record. Probably wouldn't fit within what we describe as like the Orthodox Christian tradition, but um, is a lot of searching on that album and for Jesus and by name. And it's really beautiful.
Hmm.
I'm on three now, so
Yeah.
I think that I would have to, just for the sole sake of acknowledging the influence and impact on me and kind of an industry, I would probably say Jesus Freak by DC Talk.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
here's a funny story about that. I was a child, or I was a teenager in the '90s when this record came out, and I grew up like I had the early DC Talk records on cassette because I was into the rap music of the late '80s and early '90s. And a guy at the Christian bookstore told my mom, like, well, if they like that, then give them this.
Hmm.
And we did like it. We didn't know any better to think
Yeah.
that like, oh, this is lame or this is Christian. We just thought cool.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's not a DC Talk is not really a band. They're like three dudes, like two
Yeah,
of
they're
them
like a boy
sing.
band.
Yeah, two of them sing and one rap. It's just a really strange arrangement that evolved into what do you do when you're not going to just do hip hop records anymore? So I guess we'll be kind of a VH1 pop alternative band with shades of grunge because that was a big thing
Yeah.
at the time. And they created this like super produced record. I mean, if you listen to it, and this is why I bring it up. My friends and I have this thing we do. We call it Discography Club. We have a group thread. We nominate artists. They have to be someone that at least the majority of the group hasn't heard the discography. A couple people can, but we nominate artists. Start with the first record, listen to the entire discography over the course of like days or weeks, however long the discography is, and we send the ratings on a 5-star scale back and forth to each other with our comments on each record. And you listen to a lot of bad records this way. I mean, we listen to everything from like Kiss, and they had dozens of albums, to Slayer. I'd never really heard a Slayer record. To DC Talk. Someone said, let's listen to DC Talk. And we thought, oh, that'll be funny. Let's do it. And everyone in the group, this like group of, music lovers whose tastes probably don't fit within that kind of thing, admitted when they re-listened to Jesus Freak with headphones as an adult that they're like, it's a really good record. Like
Yeah.
it's and its production is kind of incredible. The
Mm-hmm.
the things that you probably wouldn't notice, well, at least I didn't when I was 12 years old or something like that. But now as a musician and someone who's been in the studio a million times, I'm thinking like, oh man, how did they get that sound? And wow, this is a really cool thing that they did. And these songs are really sophisticated. So as funny as it sounds, I'm being completely honest. I think Jesus Freak is kind of a landmark album, and it's still good. You can listen to it now.
Yeah.
It's still good.
I mean, it's kind of, I guess, considered by many the quintessential CCM album for a reason. It was a game changer.
Yeah, I can't disagree.
Yeah.
And then, I think that there's like a million predictable things I could say about the Tooth and Nail catalog. I was firmly like you, a Tooth and Nail fan. I bought records just because they were on Tooth and Nail Records, and was taken with a great many of them across lots of different genres. So I guess I'll say that the other, I named 90 Pound Will's, probably the other big tooth and nail act for me is Joy Electric.
Nice.
And within his discography, I would probably pick the White Songbook.
That one's great. I think it's kind of underrated, honestly.
Yeah. I think I like almost all the Joy Electric albums, at least moderately, and a lot of them I like a lot, But the first one I bought was We Are the Music Makers. I was in high school, and it's an absolute overwhelming symphony of analog synth, to the degree that it kind of alienates a lot of listeners. It's just like, what the heck are you listening to? Like the tapestry of sound is so dense. But I really liked it. And then I liked when he went minimalistic with albums like Robot Rock, and the Christian songs, which are more straightforward pop songs, and kind of stripping back the layers of how many different sequencers can we add. And I think he would probably object to my use of the term sequencers, but I mean like arpeggiated synthesizer sounds. But the White Songbook, to me, I remember buying it when it came out just because I was a steady fan. Like, I would buy the new record and at least give it a listen. Some of them were like, no, it's not my favorite. And others would be, whoa, wow, listen to what he did here. That one, to me, from the opening track on, was just like, oh, this to me sounds like this is an overused adjective, but an epic record. It establishes itself from the opening track. It's like, this is going to be a listening experience, not just a pop record. So, and that had an impact on me as a songwriter as well. So there you go. Off the top of my head, 5. I don't know that they're really my top 5, but the top 5 I thought of. So
sure, yeah,
there's
it can,
at least some kind of psychological thing going on there.
Yeah, it can be a top 5, or just 5 favorites in general. Because I know some people kind of struggle with like ranking albums or like having a top 5. So
Sure.
It's whatever. But cool, Joy Electric, fellow Tooth and Nail alumni turned pastor.
That's right, man. Me and him, we're doing it.
Yeah. and you guys are the only ones so far that have been on my channel. So yeah.
That's got to say something. That's got to mean something.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I have to become a pastor now. Cool. Anyways, thanks so much, man. I don't want to keep you any longer. You've been awesome having on the show. Everyone needs to, alongside your music, but check out, I've got it right here, With All Its Teeth. I'm doing a Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon, I guess. Like,
yeah.
Check out With All Its Teeth,
Yep.
Sex, Violence, Profanity, and the Death of Christian Art. Also, definitely Death to Deconstruction. That book was very, very challenging for me in a good way. And check out all the music. Was there anything that you wanted to plug before you headed out?
No, man, you did it for me. Thanks very much. I keep it all at joshuasporter.com. So if you want to find out about that kind of stuff, it's all there.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, dude. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right, cool. I just gotta give a hand clap to Mr. Porter. Thanks, Josh, so much for coming on the show. It was an absolute privilege. It's just still crazy that it even happened. I still can't believe, because I saw that he announced that he was releasing his book With All Its Teeth, and I was like, I bet he's gonna want to be promoting this new book, and probably gonna want to be on podcasts and such. I'll shoot my shot, and I did, and he was like, yeah, sure. So yeah, absolute honor. Big fan over here. So it was just really cool. Let me know what you guys thought of our conversations. I know we covered a lot, and mostly stuff having to do with Christian art and everything like that. What are your guys' thoughts? And again, check out his book With All Its Teeth. it resonates with me a whole lot because, you know, this is something that I talk about all the time on this show. You know, Christians and our relationship with art, not just music, but art in general, and how that should work, you know. So yeah, really good conversation. And glad to have him on the show. I could just keep repeating that over and over. Still can't believe that it happened. All right, so oh gosh dang it, I almost forgot about that, but I don't even know if I have enough time. So I was possibly going to talk about the CCM tournament, but I think this episode has gone on long enough. Okay, so I'll just give a little introduction for you guys. There's this thing going on Twitter. It's called the CCM tournament, and it's being led by oh man, I can't remember his full name. I think it's Eric. He's his Twitter is at in Everglow. And he started this last year. Yeah, Eric McClanahan. He has this thing going on called #CCM Tournament 2024. If you guys want to go check it out and participate, it's basically this whole tournament of different artists against each other, and it's just a voting based tournament. So, and it's really a lot of fun, and it's ongoing. And what I wanted to do is share my own bracket, and you know what? I think we'll just save it for the next episode, because I am going to talk about the new song Disentangled, but that's not going to take up the whole episode. So we'll do that, and the actual tournament should be over by that time. So I think what I'll do is that I'll share what my tournament would be like, and then we'll share the results of the actual tournament, which I think is fun, because we got artists from the artists from the 70s and 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s and 20s. So yeah, it's a fun time. Yeah. Master Eats says, "Good for you. Love to hear from indie artists, for real." Well, I'm glad, man. I figured you would enjoy that. Not sure if you're a Showbread fan, but yeah, it was really good, really fun. And hopefully, I just love doing this. I love that this channel has given me opportunities to interact with people that I respect, and yeah, have a lot of love for. So, okay, so no CCM tournament this week, but that'll be in 2 weeks in the next episode. But we are going to get into my humble opinion, and man, there was a lot of music that has come out, and I said that last time, and it's still coming out. I wasn't even able to talk about, I'm not going to be able to talk about every little thing that's coming out. Master Eth says, "Never heard of them, looked at their Spotify, love the cover art and what it represents." Yeah, they have a lot of really good cover art. I've always appreciated their aesthetic. So yeah, going to talk about some new releases and give my humble opinions on them. And you know, next episode I'm going to be doing catch up as well, because there's stuff that came out like yesterday that I haven't gotten around to. So, but these are the big ones for me that really stuck out to me. And one of the big ones that a lot of people are talking about is the duo themselves, 21 Pilots. Now, so they have a new single out called Overcompensate, and they're teasing their new album Clancy that's coming out really soon. And I gotta say, I'm excited because I was a big 21 Pilots fan back around when like Vessel came out, and I gotta say, looking back, I'm not as big into those early albums like Vessel or Blurry Face as I used to be. Kind of didn't really age well to me, in my opinion. But And you guys will know this if you listen to the Podwood Forecast episode where we talked about our 2018 favorite albums of that year. Trench is an incredible it's an incredible album, and it's my favorite from them. A lot of that has to do with why is chat not showing up? I can see your chats, but you're not showing up for some reason. That's weird. Must be. See, here we go again with the technical difficulties with this stream, but I guess that's not a huge deal. But a big reason why Trench was so great, in my opinion, was because of Paul Meany's production on it. And Paul Meany is formerly of Mute Math. They're an incredible. They were an incredible band, and so Paul Meany is an incredible producer and brought a lot of the best out of them. I gotta say that I wasn't really big on Scaled and Icy. Just in my opinion, I thought it was kind of what's the word that I want? Underwhelming compared to Trench. So there was like a couple songs on there that I liked. Just wasn't too big on. In fact, I was listening to Choker a few days ago. I like that song, but overall, I just thought it was kind of weak. But this new track, Overcompensate, definitely harkens back to Trench. I mean, the song literally says, "Welcome back to Trench." And they talk about in a lot of the teaser promotional stuff that they put out that it is like a return to, in terms of like the lore, which that's a meme, I guess. People are talking about lore a lot. But in terms of like the lore, it is kind of a return to that story or whatever. I'm not going to say that I understand everything about the 21 Pilots lore. But anyways, yeah, it definitely harkens back to that feel and that sound. And it's got this nice late 90s, early 2000s type beat. Some of the best drumming I've heard from Joshua done. Very Darren King-esque, which, speaking of Mute Math, Darren King was the drummer for Mute Math. Paul Meany's production is on top as usual. Oh, there's the chat. It's now it's working. His production is on top as usual, mixing a bunch of interesting different sounds over top a solid dark instrumental. The chorus is incredibly catchy and melodious, and I love how it's juxtaposed by Tyler's hard-hitting and incredible flow on this track. A minute and a half into it, the beat completely changes, and I love that. It transitions so beautifully. Master Eth says, love the new TOP single. To be fair, that music was like a decade ago, so that's fair. So you're talking about Vessel and such. Yeah, I guess so. And I guess I was like in a particular time in my life where I was younger, so that their music really spoke to me back then, not as much as it does now. But Ethan also says, honestly, the new single gives me Blurry Face vibes, which was my favorite era of TOP and still is, honestly. Love the switch up halfway through. Yeah, I guess I think it's the best things of Blurry Face. I think Trench went places that I wanted Blurry Face to go. And so that's why I love Trench. So I guess I guess Overcompensate is like the perfect blend of both of those, which I wouldn't want them to repeat Trench. I would want it to be a completely new album. And there are things that I liked about Blurry Face, but not every little track on there. But yeah, so I've been jamming this a lot. So if you guys have never checked out 21 Pilots before, I believe that this is now the time to do that. So yeah, Overcompensate by 21P. Yeah, got me bopping along to it. Okay, so darling of this channel, Ethan says, I liked half of Trench and was not a fan of Scaled and Icy. Thank you. I'm just glad that we're going in a more hype direction, so I'm here for it. No, yeah. I'm pretty excited for it. So hopefully this album will not disappoint. So yeah. Okay, so darling of this channel, Benjamin Daniel. Y'all know his album Home Enough for Now was my #1 Christian album of last year. And he's already got new music out. You know, we're not done talking about him. He's got a new album coming out, and his new single is Take Hold. And this song is great to listen to with headphones, I gotta say. Asher Peterson, who is the son of artist Andrew Peterson, did a great job producing this one. A lot of really cool guitar parts just tingling throughout the whole song. And on top of that, got some lovely cello in there and a bunch of other great sounds. It's just so much happening sonically, and I love it. Ben is as heartfelt as ever with these lyrics. He talks about being with a close friend of his and talking through the trials of life. He talks about how he's still dealing with the passing of his mother, which we know was the main topic of Home Enough for Now, and how God's light has pulled him through, and he reminds us to take hold of that light as we continue on. And so, yeah, just beautiful acoustic indie rock type feel that I think is wonderful. And, you know, Benjamin never really seems to disappoint. And so I'm really stoked for this new album. So yeah, check out his new single, Take Hold. Take hold, face your light. All right, and up next is an artist that has been around for a while, but I've never really talked about him before. It's The Rocket Summer, and he has a new single called Don't Be Yourself. And I gotta say that I kind of when he was popular, I kind of missed that bandwagon. But in even last year, he released an album that I have still yet to check out. But for some reason, recently, I saw that he had a new single. I was like, hey, let me check it out, and maybe I'll talk about it on the show. And I liked it. I liked it a lot. What starts out as a sort of indie acoustic song, it explodes into an all-out like alternative rock jam. Very anthemic. It harkens back to bands like Switchfoot and Reliant K, and has that perfect blend of punk and alternative. In this inspirational song, Bryce Avery implores with us to be okay with where we are, but trust the process of growing into the person you're meant to be. And, you know, being okay with who you are, but at the same time, not being, you know, not staying where you are. It's very motivational, but still heartfelt and fun to listen to. So I definitely need to, you know, I need to refresh myself on all things The Rocket Summer. But yeah, this is a great new single, and I appreciate it a lot. So yeah, check out Don't Be Yourself by The Rocket Summer.
Don't be yourself in a million years. Be yourself right here.
Oh gosh, here we go again with it. See, this is why we gotta stop with the live stream, because things just click out. I'm just glad that it didn't happen during the interview, so that's cool. All right, last but not least, I mentioned this guy in the last episode because their EP made it in my favorite EPs of last year. Well, I guess it's just one guy. It's the Rocky Valentines, and it's Charles Martin, the son of Jason Martin of Starflyer 59 and nephew of Ron Martin of Joy Electric. And it's his new song, Sing the Song, because they've got I think it's a full-length album that's coming out. I should have that information, but either way, he's coming out with something new, and he's got this new single before it called Sing the Song. And you know, Charles Martin does not get the short end of the stick when it comes to talent in his family, that's for sure. Gearing up for this whole release, Sing the Song is a promising track for what's to come with its dreamy yet grungy shoegaze sound. And Charles reminds us that through these strange times, the best thing to do is to keep our head up and sing the song. So definitely really vibing with the song, and I can't wait for what's to come next. So yeah, Sing the Song by the Rocky Valentines. You know what? I'm just going to play that again because that was so glitchy. The Rocky Valentines, Sing the Song. Okay, still not great. Whatever. I give up. This is too much for me. I'm too old for this. Anyways, that's all I have for my humble opinion. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking. I think he's like down in the hallway, so I don't know if that's picking up. But anyways, okay, so let's see what else. We're just finishing up here today. Really good episode. For the most part, I'd say. Really fun. Leave a comment what you guys thought of the episode. So reminder, next episode is going to be about the Disentangle song. Be sure to check that out when it's out, but I'll definitely be going through just kind of like dissecting all that it's about in the next episode, and we'll talk about the CCM tournament, and it's gonna be a fun one. So yeah, and I think that should about do it for also since he's still here, be sure to check out Master Eth and his YouTube channel. Just thought I'd give that little shout out there. All right, well, you guys are awesome, and that'll be it for this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked what you saw, what you heard. Leave a like, sub to the channel. Going for 500 subs, and once I reach 500 subs, there'll be a special. Oh, Gems of the Internet is now following. I assume. I think that's. I'm gonna assume that's Ethan because that's his show. He's watching on Twitch as well. Anyway, so yeah, leave a like and subscribe. Leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and whatever podcast platform you're on. I'm Clifford today. Make sure to check out my clips and highlights channel if you guys want to check those out. Podwood Forecast, again, we have our favorite albums of 2023 episode out, and we're coming out with our favorite films of 2023 very soon. Merch, always got merch in the description. Yeah, that's my Twitch. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Nice, thanks for the follow, man. New video I'm working on. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be filming the Winter Jam video with my friend Nick, so that's next on the radar for me, but it'll be a while before that's out. But yeah, until then, remember that I'm Clifford today, and you're not. Y'all are lovely. See ya in a couple weeks. Bye.